let's talk about the Knicks defending the three-point line, which has been something they've struggled
Mm.
with really since Tom Thibodeau came to town in 2020. How can the Knicks patch that up? There's been long-standing vulnerability there guarding the art that bleeds into this season. Right now, currently, through 9 games, opponents are averaging 15.9 made threes per game on 41% shooting. That's the third worst perimeter mark in the entire NBA. How can they get better at that? And who do you think is key to enhancing their vulnerability, decreasing their vulnerability on the perimeter?
Yeah, I love the second part of that question. Who is key for this? But I'm gonna say how do I think they get better is some of it is interesting because when you look at the Knicks defensively, particularly this year under Mike Brown, you got OG's roaming a little bit more than he has in the past and has more flexibility to do that, which has been really good for him because he's had an uptick in his deflections per game. I would also say the same for Mikal, and those guys have been getting more steals. So you knew there'd be a little bit more gambling there. I think that sometimes, while good and leads to positives, can also lead to some negatives with some of the weaker defensive players, particularly in the Knicks starting lineup, having to scramble on rotations. But who's got to be better? When we talk about that, it's got to be Karl-Anthony Towns. Absolutely has to be Karl-Anthony Towns. Cat, and I want to give Cat some grace here because I still think Lee, he's trying to figure out. You got to remember, he tried to play a lot in drop coverage last year, and for all of us who watch this team closely and analyze it, we know that looked terrible. It was not good at all whatsoever. He's not doing the same this year, but I still feel like he just doesn't look as comfortable. I think Cat can hold his own sometimes in switches. When he has smaller players switched onto him, he is capable of moving his feet well. The thing is, I think he doesn't trust himself sometimes in knowing that he is prone to making some dumb fouls. And so that sometimes causes him to be in no man land where it's like, should I come out and fully close out? Am I staying back? Do I not want to get beat off the dribble? I would love to see him trust his instincts a little bit more. You like aggression, especially when it comes to guarding the 3 point line, but you don't want to be too aggressive, especially against good teams, right? Because you're scared of getting blown by, you're scared of them pulling up the three. But I really think when you have the lineups where Cat is on the floor as the primary big, and there isn't Mitch there to help him on situations, especially in that back line, I think he's really got to get better. I also think in certain situations with Cat on the floor, as I said, we're seeing OG, roam a little bit more, play a little bit more free safety, if you want to say that, right? We're seeing Mikal Bridges gamble a bit more. I think sometimes in those situations, guys have to stay home with their guy, maybe not gamble as much. I think this is going to be part of a feeling out process. The defense is something like the offense. I'm really willing to see and take a look at how it looks 25, 26 games into the season. But I think it's going to have a lot more of guys trusting the communication, trusting the calls, and particularly, we know Jalen Brunson is limited on size in terms of his defense, right? And some of the stuff in getting out, getting over pick and roll situations where he's a defender and getting over on screens, that's going to hurt. But Cat, I think it's got to be a little bit better. He's the key to me. If he's more trusting more of his defensive instincts and not over aggressive, then I think the Knicks will be able to guard the three a lot better. And especially if he's coming out on guys, I think he'll be better there. What do you think?
That's a sound argument. I don't disagree with any points that you made. I would go a little bit further and say this is why Mitchell Robinson's health is so important.
I
When
don't
you do
disagree with
play,
that at all. I don't disagree with
when
that
you
at
do
all. Mm-hmm.
when you got that double big lineup, which wasn't available at Tom Thibodeau, and that's not his fault to start last season. Karl-Anthony Towns was forced to be the lone big man at the five, and OG Anunoby was having issues rebounding at the four. So a lot of the time, Karl-Anthony Towns was forced to get in drop because whether that was what was being called by Tom Thibodeau or not, it was his failsafe. It's what he just slipped into when he didn't know what the coverage was or how to guard a screen. If you have Mitchell Robinson as that back line, you can keep Towns at the level, and he's actually a pretty solid defender around the nail. I like him in those positions. We've seen him multiple games this year against Vucevic in Chicago, the second game, where he guarded Vuce on an island, and I thought he did a pretty good job mirroring that last time he went to the West Conference Finals, the Wolves, where he guarded Durant one series and Joker one series, especially Game 7 of that Western Conference semifinals. That was the best defense I've ever seen from him in his entire career. So I think he is capable, but it's also, again, Dursan Yabusele, we need him to get back in the game shape so that his closeouts are crisper,
Mm.
that he can get back and be lateral on ball switches. Otherwise, it's going to be compromised any minutes that don't involve Mitchell Robinson on the floor because you're either going to have OG having to do way too much in some type of pre-switch action with Karl-Anthony Towns, or you're going to have Towns paired with another net negative defender and Yabusele, who neither of them are capable of closing out on defenders getting lost in defensive coverages. We need both the health of Mitchell Robinson and Yabusele to be mitigated so that we can have a sound defensive show.
No, I agree, and I love that you referred back to that Western Conference run that Cat had, and who was next to him, Rudy Gobert. Right? That I agree. That was the best defense we saw from Cat. Now, look, I know Cat's polarizing for a lot of Knicks fans, and sometimes they're frustrated with his effort, and sometimes the silly fouls. I get all that, but there is a blueprint to this that you just mentioned. We have seen him next to an elite defensive center. Right? We've seen him just look a lot better in terms of a lot of the stress is not put on him. Cat cannot anchor a defense at the 5. We know this. But next to an elite defensive 5 like a Mitchell Robinson, yeah, he can look really good. And you're right. That's why Mitch's health is so important. And lately, since he's come back from the early season load management, when Mitch has been on the floor, Knicks offense and defense has looked a whole lot better. I don't disagree. Also, I do think your point about Gershon Yabusele and how he can help, why him getting back into game shape is also very important. We'll see.